Singer, actor, writer, director, and horror aficionado, this icon has done it all.
I'm gonna do one, you're gonna do one.
Hello everyone and welcome to Rock Feed, the best channel to get all of your rock music news, bios, and more. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe and make sure that notification bell is turned on so you get all of our latest updates. Born Robert Bartlett Cummings in Haverhill, Massachusetts on January 12, 1965, he is the oldest son of Robert and Louise Cummings. However, you all probably know him better as Rob Zombie. Growing up, Rob always had a huge fascination with all things horror. He grew up watching The Munsters and The Addams Family. He loves Frankenstein's monster and even stated that he always wanted to be Alice Cooper, Steven Spielberg, Bela Lugosi, and Stan Lee. Now, not a ton is known about Rob's childhood. He has said in interviews that he got his first guitar around the time he was in kindergarten and that his parents used to work at a carnival. He would get to run around and scare people, until one night when a riot broke out. Rob said, "Everybody's pulling out guns and you could hear guns going off. I remember this one guy we knew, he was telling us where to go, and some guy just ran up to him and hit him in the face with a hammer. Just busted his face wide open. My parents packed up real quick and we took off." Rob wasn't a very good student growing up. He says that he would rather stay up late watching TV and then he'd be dead on his feet all the next day. When he was asked about whether or not his parents pushed him to get a good education, he chuckled and said, "Not so much, no. I did graduate high school though, because in my last couple of years, I figured out an incredible scam. Essentially, I shouldn't have graduated, but I realized that if I signed up for many art classes, I could get my grades up enough to graduate. Basically, I went to school, signed in, and then left and did other stuff all day long. I just made sure that all my artwork got turned in. I got straight A grades in art, and I got perfect grades for attendance, although I was never there. Nobody was paying attention, so I got away with it." After graduating high school in 1983, Rob moved to New York City and attended the Parsons Design Institute. There, he met his bandmate and girlfriend of 7 years, Shauna Reynolds, aka Sean Izzo. In 1985, Sean and Rob co-founded the metal band White Zombie. Rob has been quoted as saying, "We were a bunch of people who could only play our instruments a bit, and like any band, the members would change every 5 minutes. That's just the way it goes. We were always serious, but it took a couple of years until anyone even remotely gave a shit at all. And I mean on a really tiny level. There was a New York scene that White Zombie got connected to, a sort of art rock scene that Sonic Youth were the kings of, and other bands like Pussy Galore were in there too. It was cool. We felt like we had a tiny home, at CBGB's anyway." While White Zombie was working their way up the local scene, something people may not know was that Rob worked a few interesting jobs to help pay the bills. First, he was a bike messenger. Then he was a production assistant on Pee-wee's Playhouse. And when that gig ended, he became a graphic designer for a couple of different porno mags. During the late 80s, White Zombie released a few EPs and 2 studio albums, but it was after their 4th EP release that they got the attention of Geffen Records. It was also during this time that Rob and Sean had broken up, and Rob started dating his future wife, Sherry Moon, a little while later. White Zombie released their major label debut album, La Sexorcisto Devil Music Volume 1 with Geffen Records in 1992. This would eventually enter the Billboard Top 200, selling over 2 million records in the US alone, thanks to hits like Thunderkiss 65 and Black Sunshine. White Zombie would release one more studio album followed by a remix album. Their final studio album, Astro Creep 2000, Songs of Love, Destruction, and Other Synthetic Delusions of the Electric Head on April 11, 1995. This album hit the Billboard charts top 10, again selling over 2 million copies in the US, thanks to hits like Supercharger Heaven and More Human Than Human. It was the music video More Human Than Human that Rob made his directorial debut. He would then change his name legally to Rob Zombie and go on to direct multiple videos for the band before they disbanded in 1998. When asked about the disbanding of White Zombie, Rob said, "It run its course. Bands are weird. You start them at a certain age and you're supposed to stick together forever, like you're always gonna be teenagers with the same mindset. Success is a big thing that you can never plan for because it affects everybody differently. I don't want to blame myself or anyone else in the band, it's just that the band didn't work anymore. Rather than continuing on and making shitty records and having it all fall apart, I thought, let's just end it on a high point. Rob's first solo outing was a song titled Hands of Death, Burn Baby Burn in 1996. It was written and performed with the legendary Alice Cooper, and was nominated for Best Metal Performance at the 39th Annual Grammy Awards. Rob would then go on to release his first solo album, Hellbilly Deluxe, 13 Tales of Cadaverous Cavorting Inside the Spook Show International on August 25, 1998. Hellbilly Deluxe went on to be a commercial success, selling over 3 million copies and breaking the top 5 on the Billboard Top 200. With 3 hit singles, Dragula, Living Dead Girl, and Super Beast, there was no doubt that Rob was going to outperform his former band. In between his first and second solo albums, Rob directed his first feature-length film, House of a Thousand Corpses, in 2000, though the film ultimately was not released until a few years later in 2003. House of a Thousand Corpses would go on to become a cult classic and spawn 2 additional sequels, The Devil's Rejects and 3 from Hell. After directing House of a Thousand Corpses, Rob went on to direct his second studio album, The Sinister Urge, on November 13, 2001. After the success of his first movie, Rob wrote and directed The Devil's Rejects in 2005. The Devil's Rejects would go on to receive much higher praise than his first outing. Which zombie fun fact? Rob had actually written a movie before House of a Thousand. Rob wrote The Crow 2037 and was also supposed to direct it before the studio decided it wasn't what they wanted and ultimately shelved it. Now, when Rob was asked about the difference of music versus movies, he said, "The movie business is much more difficult than the music business because it's about bigger money. If you want to operate on a big level and have your movie in lots of theaters all around the world, the amount of money it takes to get those things done is insane. Even a low-budget movie costs $15 to $20 million. If you ask someone to give you $15 million to make a record, they'd be like, fuck you." Rob then released his third solo album, Educated Horses, in 2006 to mixed critic reviews. While it did perform well, it didn't have the same success as his previous 2 albums. Rob then decided to go back to making movies. In 2007, he directed what he calls the reimagining of John Carpenter's Halloween. While it did do really well at the box office, critics had some pretty mixed reviews. Rob had stated after doing Halloween that he had no interest in ever doing a sequel. Despite that, in 2009, Rob directed the Halloween sequel H2, which was released in August, followed by the animated film The Haunted World of El Superbeasto in September, which is actually based on his comic book The Adventures of El Superbeasto. Here's another zombie fun fact. Rob has created or co-created 7 different comic book series for publishers like Dark Horse, Image Comics, and CrossGen Comics. In 2009, Rob announced he was headed back to the studio to begin work on a new album. This album wound up being Hellbilly Deluxe 2, Noble Jackals, Penny Dreadfuls, and the Systematic Dehumanization of Cool. However, this album was not released under longtime label Geffen Records. Rob decided it was time to move on and he signed with Roadrunner. The album was released to mixed critic reviews, but it still broke the top 10 on the Billboard 200. Because Rob can't not be busy, between tours, Rob went on to make his new movie, The Lords of Salem, followed by another studio album, Venomous Rat Regeneration Vendor. During this time, he left Roadrunner and released this album through his own label, Zodiac Swan. This was his 5th studio album to debut in the top 10, but it did not do as well as some of his other previous records. Shortly after the release of his last album, Rob began a crowdfunding campaign for a new horror movie titled 31. The movie is about a group of individuals who get stuck in a carnival and they try to survive the night from a group of killer clowns. Sounds like a good time. 31 was released on September 16, 2016. The same year that 31 was released, Rob also dropped his latest studio album, The Electric Warlock Acid Witch Satanic Orgy Celebration Dispenser, which Rob was quoted as saying, "Seriously, our heaviest, most fucked up musical monster to date." When Rob was asked about his thoughts on the current state of rock, he said, "I hear what's supposed to be rock music on the radio, and it sounds like something my mom would like. To me, rock and roll used to be a fuck you to everybody. Now, rock and roll seems like the most conservative, safe, middle-of-the-road crap. It's embarrassing. Grunge rock came to the party and ruined it. Rock and roll was a great party, and don't get me wrong, I didn't like 80s metal either, that was horrible. But grunge came in and it was anti-everything, anti-image, anti-show, anti-rock star. Until there was nothing left but a bunch of depressed junkies crying about high school. Rock never recovered, and it still hasn't recovered. In addition to everything Rob has done in movies, music, and comics, his creativity doesn't stop there. Rob has also helped design a haunted house called the Great American Nightmare, which was based on his movies. Unfortunately, this attraction hasn't been open since 2015. But in 2019, he did bring back the House of a Thousand Corpses attraction to Universal's Halloween Horror Nights for the first time in 7 years. Rob has always had the mindset of, I'm going to do what I want to do, and if you don't like it, screw you. It's that attitude that has given Rob all of the success he has and will continue to have. Whether it be in movies, comics, theme park attractions, or music, Rob is going to do it all his way. Thank you for watching. While you are here, please check out some of our other mini rock docs and be sure to subscribe. Thank you again, and we will see you in the next video.